A ballerina's perspective, from performing with New York City Ballet and Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater to publishing poetry books and mentoring kids and teens. Join us in a weekly discussion with experts to gain mental health clarity and achieve growth in moral consciousness. Give our show a 5 stars, comment, share, and come along for the ride. Welcome to the Growth, Grace, and Gratitude podcast. Today, we will talk about the art of life coaching and expanding beyond limiting beliefs with Kim Keane, who is a certified life coach, Reiki master, and sound healer. She also is a certified integrative energy therapy and emotional freedom technique practitioner. Kim hosts the One of a Kind You podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you about all things life coaching. I feel like this is such a huge topic in the spirituality space and mental health space. So I love that more and more people are connecting to this practice.
It is because I feel like it gives people the relief that they're looking for um, in ways that sometimes allow them to try out of the box ideas.
Yes, it's so true. And I feel like so often many of us who are on this journey of discovering ourselves into a new layer after healing, after recovery, or even during recovery or after trauma. ClickFunnels easily build any type of online business and sales funnel in record time, no matter what your product, service, or niche, without any tech design or experience whatsoever. Try the ClickFunnels 14-day free trial, link in the description of the podcast. We figure out who we really are or how we actually like to address things, and we have so many different kind of aspects to learn. I feel like we are learning and we're unlearning about ourselves. Life coaching really gets us to a point of understanding ourselves so much more. Is that how you feel about life coaching as well with your clients?
I Yeah, I do because I feel like when we come into a space of where we recognize that we need to do some healing work or we need to take a recovery journey, it's because we have all of this stuff piled on top of us. And so like in the coaching world, that's called your operational identity. That's basically like survival mode. And then as you work through coaching, it allows you to peel back the layers and you see the patterns that you're running and you see the triggers that you have and you see the outdated false beliefs that you have, and you can peel those away. You can take the knowledge for what you need from them, but it allows you to start shifting back into your core identity, which is more of who you were before.
Unlock your best life with Soul app. Book a holistic wellness experience with a trained guide and start changing your life today with compassion practices, inner healing, food and diet, and so much more. Tap into a healthier and happier life with the #1 purposeful living app in the US, the Soul app, link in the description of the podcast.
All of those things got put on top of you by parents and family and friends and society and teachers and coaches and all the things and all the people, so you can actually really feel like you're feeling more aligned with yourself and feeling more confident to show up and let your light shine. I know that sounds like very like, woo, let your light shine, but like actually show up authentically for who you know that you are and not playing small anymore.
Yeah, that is so true. Being authentic sounds like, oh yeah, it's like everybody's saying that now. But it is kind of interesting how we even explain that to ourselves or teens or kids, because we want to program kids in a healthy way to be authentic, to be themselves. And I feel like the only way kids are able to be themselves if they have an example to look up to. Because obviously when you tell a child like be yourself, they're like, what? Like they don't know what that means. They're already embodying their natural state. When we have a good example to look up to, whether that is like a coach or a friend, a parent, do you think that plays an important role in shaping our true authentic nature?
Oh, without a doubt, because I grew up with a mom who was very insecure, and so I learned that that was like the way to be, and bless my mom, she's had a lot of trauma in the past. So considering the trauma that she's experienced and where she is today, she's like doing an amazing job at life. But then also having going through my parents' divorce when I was little, and then having a pretty tumultuous relationship with my stepmom also factored into it. It was like two weird family dichotomies that I was in. So I always felt like I was in purgatory. So I think absolutely the things that we experience and the people that we have around us as kids definitely impacts the way that we learn how to show up. And so sometimes it's like you'll see kids who are overly confident. And then also that too is like also not the greatest thing because they're not really sure how to read the room because they've been taught to like just be so big. And it's like, no, you can't always be so big because it's a lot of times it's a false facade. So they're learning like, we rely on the same and fake it till you make it. And sometimes that can be a really serving thing. But then I think sometimes it gets overused. And so then there's a lot of faking and never making it. And it comes across as disingenuine and it comes across as annoying and frustrating and off-putting. And so I think that also sends the wrong message to adults too. You hear that a lot in the self-help industry. You just have to fake it until you make it.
Podpitch is the first and only software that finds, writes, and sends pitches to podcast hosts from your actual email address. Podpitch will make sure you get podcast bookings, guaranteed. Link in the description of the podcast.
You just have to fake it until you make it. And the more you fake it, the more you'll start to believe that you're actually this person. And it's like, actually, no, that's not really how that works because your brain doesn't believe it because the limiting beliefs are speaking louder than the believing of the making it. So when you put yourself in that position where you're saying like, oh my gosh, I have to fake it until I make it, the more you fake it, the more your brain is telling you that what you're doing isn't wrong and it isn't working. And then it puts you in this awkward position where you feel even more unsure and more insecure and more confused than you already were, and frustrated and angry and bitter because you're like, I'm faking it, but I'm still not making it. Because that's on some level a very surface level way to approach what's going on deeper inside.
100%. That's so true how you mentioned about like kids who are over the top with their like superiority. And a lot of times when they're raised by narcissistic parents, that's how they're kind of brought up in that space of like, you're the best. And I feel like that's actually a really horrible way to raise your kids. And only now there's more research coming out to reveal and to confirm how that is actually very damaging for kids because then it kind of boosts their like toxic ego. They're little kids, and like kids don't need that. They just have to go play in the sandbox with their friends, make a mess, be safe and have fun. Like I remember I had a few friends when I was growing up, and I also felt that there are some kids who kind of were not always there, but when they were coming to the park, it felt like they were kind of outsiders because they were trying to project this kind of like superiority, like they are
Mhm.
greater than, they are better than, and all the kids in the park kind of were looking at them like that doesn't fly here. Like we're not going to, take that. So that's really nice that kids are able to kind of like see and be like, okay, that's not really adding up to how kids should be. But actually, like some kids, it can lead to bullying because when people think that they are the best, especially kids, they don't really have that sensitivity. And when those kids grow up, they actually do have a very difficult time creating and maintaining friendships and relationships because they're starting to build from a very shaky foundation. There's no, seeing somebody, understanding somebody, meeting somebody at the same level because they're unaware of their own level because they're like, floating in the clouds, like, I'm the best, I'm great. So it's interesting how it comes back to parenting and parenting dynamics and how crucial that whole journey of conscious parenting is. I think there's like a whole new theme going on now where parents are going into this conscious realm of raising their kids from a space of like, how should I raise my kids? Like, what is the best way to get them integrated in a healthy way to society where they can remain confident and also be sensitive and empathic towards others? I think that's a great foundation to also shape their little minds and brains to have less limiting beliefs as well.
Yes. And I think too,
Sanger Daniels' online seminar promoting a positive message of self-healing with bioenergy work together with live seminars and remote coaching. Use code BIO20 for a 20% discount for our audience. Link in the description of the podcast.
so the thing that was really, I'll say, key on my healing journey that I was like, oh, it all makes sense. Like everything that we do is a pattern. And we learn patterns in childhood. That's typically where the pattern starts. Like the overachiever pattern, it starts in childhood. The people pleaser pattern, it starts in childhood. The perfectionistic pattern, it typically starts in childhood. And so we run these patterns to meet our needs. And so I ended up in an unhealthy relationship in high school. I, burned out on my teaching career after 6 years. And as I was going through my healing journey started off with talk therapy, and that really wasn't working because it was just a lot of talking and then gaslighting into taking medication. But I knew the struggles that I had were learned struggles, and I knew I had to unlearn them. So I just felt like, yes, I could take the medication, but if I ever stopped the medication, the struggles would still be there. So in that journey of peeling back the layer with the coach, I recognized like, oh my gosh, I'm running these patterns, but I'm running these patterns to meet my emotional needs. And so a lot of times, like when kids are overly confident, it's typically because they're doing that to feel more significance. Significance is just another word for knowing that we matter, because they're not feeling significant at home unless they're performing or producing or achieving. And so they'll do whatever it takes to get that need of significance met. I didn't create the emotional needs. Tony Robbins did. And I know there's like some controversy around Tony, but like the principles that he coaches with are solid principles. So that's to say that the emotional needs, there are six actually, but there are four primary needs. Like we need air, food, and water, and they're love and connection. They go together. Connection is the safer of the two because love requires more vulnerability. And then there's certainty, which is another word for safety, comfort, or control. The third one is uncertainty. That's another word for variety. And then there's significance, which is knowing that we matter, we're worthy. And so we will do whatever it takes to meet those four needs, including violating our own values. The other two needs are fulfillment needs, and their growth and contribution. And we will not do whatever it takes to meet those needs. So that was huge in my own journey. I was like, oh, I see why I ended up in the unhealthy relationship. I was looking for certainty. I was looking for significance. I was looking for love and connection, and I was looking for uncertainty. But in that relationship, it wasn't allowing me to grow or contribute. So it wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't a fulfillment kind of thing. And same thing with my teaching career. I was actually able to meet all of the needs of my teaching career, but the fact that there was so much uncertainty there and not enough significance made it feel like it wasn't a good fit. So kids do the same things. And so when my girls were little, because when I started my healing journey, my kids were like 5 and 2, I think. And now they're 15 and 12. And so, my older daughter would come home from school and be like, so and so said this to so and so. And I'm like, well, Lily, that's because the emotional needs. And so it got to the point where my girls were like, we never want to hear emotional needs ever again because we've heard them enough. Like, don't ever say emotional needs to us ever again. But it's true. And so that oftentimes is why kids are behaving the way that they are, is because they're looking for meeting those four primary needs, because it's often not happening at home, or it's not the way that they need it to happen at home. And so they'll engage in behaviors at school or at the park or the playground to feel mostly its significance. Because when what hits the fan, most people value significance or certainty. So I'm in the certainty camp. So when what hits the fan, I overvalue certainty. I want to know that everything is in control, there's safety, and there's comfort. But the other camp of people, they're like, oh, I don't care about that. I just want to know I matter. And so oftentimes the kids who are over the top, who are beating their chest like, look at me, look at me, look at me, look at me. They're going to grow into adults who need to know, they need that certainty piece more than anything else. They need the significance piece more
Right.
than anything else, because they want to know that at the end of the day, they matter.
That is amazing how you mentioned it. It's so true. It's like those temper tantrums always yield back towards like, I want to make sure that I matter. So it's like, yeah, it's so true. Like kids have to learn this, and also it's such a process. Interestingly enough, I was looking over your name of the podcast. It's One of a Kind, and I thought like, oh, this reminds me of like that show Two of a Kind, and I love that show growing up. And it was like the twins, Mary Kate and Ashley.
Yes.
And yesterday was actually National Sibling Day. So I
Oh,
was like,
really?
wow, yeah, like this is so cool. And then I thought, like, how we're raised as kids and how we relate to each other as siblings, cousins, friends,
Yes.
it really does like affect like the core of our attachment styles,
Mhm.
how we make friends. And I think a lot of times when we have like wounds, sibling wounds, we kind of have to heal how we relate to others on like a friendship level and how we connect through bonding. I made a workbook like a few months ago about healing the sibling wound because I think it's so important to even understand that. You know how we grow up and we have fights and we have falling outs with our siblings, and it's hard sometimes to kind of come back and have a normal conversation because there's years and years of sometimes frustration, pent up emotion. It's might be unreleased, unsaid. So it's like that process of connecting to the emotional state and having the courage and ability to talk to each other. It really does that connect to like emotional freedom technique somehow?
Mhm. Yeah. So you can do like there are so many free EFT things out there that you can follow along with. But I'll say you're going to get the most bang for your buck if you actually work with an EFT practitioner because we will be able to get to the root cause of the problem and we do customize. So the way that EFT works is that it combines a few modalities. So it combines acupressure, going back to massage principles, and then it also using the pressure points, they're actually meridians, so they're energy centers in the body. So using the acupressure moves the energy through the energy centers in the body, but then you also say specific things, and those things align with neurolinguistic programming, which is what rewires the brain. So it combines the energetic piece with the rewiring of the brain piece. So you're basically getting like a double whammy, a bigger bang for your buck. But when you are doing EFT, the important thing is to like really connect to the emotion of what it is that you're working on. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, I don't ever say the negative things when I tap EFT because I don't want to put that into the universe." And it's like, "Okay, well, then you don't really understand how the EFT works. This isn't law of attraction because that's what everyone says. Law of attraction says don't say negative because, what you put into the universe is what you get back." Well, this isn't law of attraction. So EFT is not law of attraction. So if you what you put out into the universe, it's not like that with EFT tapping. What the goal of EFT tapping is to connect to the negative emotion, the limiting belief, the fear of the situation. And so you want to tap into what like if you're feeling anxious about something, what is it that you physically feel when you're anxious about that thing? So like if you're anxious about taking a test, what do you feel when that anxiety comes over? Do you feel the knot in the stomach? Do you feel the racing heart? Do you feel like clammy? Do you like clench up? Like, what is it? Connect to that feeling. Connect to the thoughts that you have around the anxiety. Connect to the language that you have around the anxiety. And then, as the tapping practitioner, my goal is as you share what you're anxious about, I write down what you're anxious about. And then I craft the statements for you to say that connects using the exact words that you're using to then let go, neutralize that negative emotion, that negative feeling, to then bring in what you would rather have instead. So if you don't acknowledge, it's bypassing. If you don't acknowledge the negativity that you're feeling, the anxiety, the stress, the frustration, the overwhelm, you're bypassing it. So essentially you're just stuffing it down and then it's going to come back up. Like you can only stuff it down and ignore it for so long before it comes out without your control. And so that's the important part of EFT tapping is really connecting to it, acknowledging it, neutralizing it so that you can actually make this space for what you want instead. So like, yes, you can do free things, but you're probably not going to get the long lasting result that you would get is if you actually worked with a practitioner who can craft and guide and support you through the sequence. That's EFT tapping.
Yes, it's so true. Like you mentioned that avoiding those core like shameful feelings, that's where this all began. It's like that's where that limiting belief came from because there was a fear of judging
Yes.
our week, or our, it's like, oh, this is a shame, this is embarrassment, but it's like those are the things you have to uncover and be like, oh, okay, I actually feel that, and I guess it's okay. It's like, I don't have to
Yes.
judge myself as long as I'm not hurting somebody else, because what oftentimes happens is the avoidance is so strong that people end up projecting that to somebody else, and they hurt them even more than they initially wanted to. So it's like, if we just take that opportunity to look at ourselves and be like, okay, oh, okay, I have this kind of experience currently, or I'm releasing these kinds of heavy emotions and feelings, and it's yucky and it's gross, but I'm admitting it and I'm accepting it. You don't have to sit there and stay there for so long, but I think just the art of even admitting that, it's so beautiful, because it stops that kind of repetitive programs that we have in our brains. Oftentimes it's subconscious, right? It's like we create that energy, and we kind of have it stagnating around. The moment we admit to ourselves that, oh, okay, that was there, that was the emotion, that was the energy, isn't that how, like, the you start to like release those limiting beliefs, right?
Yes, and I think the biggest thing too is that we run patterns when we're triggered. So there's something that triggers us, and the trigger happens because we make a meaning about the situation. And so the key is to knowing that there nothing has the meaning except for the meaning that you give it. So like with sibling dynamics, it's tricky because my girls try to pin me in this all the time. Like, well, who do you love more, me or Casey? Well, who do you love more, me or Lily? And I'm like, I don't love either of you more. I love you the same. They're like, well, no, you have to pick one. I'm like, no, I don't have to pick anyone. I love you both the same. They're like, well, which dog do you like? Which dog do you love more? We know you love Franklin more than you love Winnie. I'm like, I don't love them more than the other. And so when that happens, like if I were to say, which is not true, if I would be like, okay, I love Lily more, then Casey would make the meaning of she's not good enough, she's not lovable, she's not worthy. And then that creates response that creates feeling. So there's a recipe of a pattern. Something happens and then a meeting is made, and then we have feelings about that, we have thoughts about it, we act in a certain way, and then it gets us a result. And so with the sibling dynamic, or any really relationship dynamic, when there's an argument, we make a meaning. Oh, I don't matter. They think they matter more than I do. All they do is criticize me. All they do is judge me. They don't really see me for who I am. And then we have these thoughts like, this happens all the time. I'm never good enough. No matter what I do, nothing changes. And then we feel sad or angry or bitter or resentful. And then we act a certain way. We give them the silent treatment, or we're rude and nasty to them, or we never speak to them again. And then what's the result that happens from that? We're miserable and lonely and still angry and bitter and resentful. But if we can kind of go back and assess the situation and be like, okay, is that meaning 100% true that I don't matter? No, that's not 100% true. What the meaning really was in the situation is that they were frustrated with me. And so they lashed out, or I was, disappointed. And so this happened. And so when we can go back and we kind of can dissect this situation from that approach, we can see typically that the meaning we give it is not 100% true. So therefore, the continued anger and frustration and things, it's easier to let that go because we can say like, oh, okay, I can actually see it now clearly for what it was. It usually gets blown out of proportion because there's a false meaning that's not 100% true.
Wow, yeah, I love that. And especially how you mentioned, like, siblings choosing a favorite, like the parents choosing, it's so true. And I know it oftentimes happens when somebody actually feels already lacking or less than, and when a child doesn't have the words yet to come up to their parents, sometimes they would internalize the parents choosing the other sibling as their favorite, but that's not even true. So when adults actually go to therapy and they start processing their inner child trauma, and they recall parts of their childhood that they made that decision and that choice based on themselves feeling already a lack and not knowing how to express their feelings, that creates so much healing and so much awareness. Like, how kids have such a creative minds that they would put that upon themselves to feel even more less than. So yeah, it's like so many kids who are empaths and who are sensitive, they also need that support system, and sometimes the parents have to talk to them or even take them to therapy or to figure out how kids talk to themselves, because it really leads to internalizing these things. And when they grow up, they have to be like, oh, wait, that was not true, even. So it's like they created this limiting belief at such a young age just because they didn't feel seen or heard or loved at the level that they needed in that moment. And I think oftentimes we all experience that on some level. We kind
Yeah.
of internalize something, right? And then we end up creating a limiting belief as an adult. And we have to kind of peel back those layers and be like, oh, what happened in my childhood that made me to create this narrative of myself or my situation or my circumstance? And I think it's a really humbling sometimes and healing experience for sure for many of us.
Yes, because we can go now from the bird's eye view and dissect it and see like, okay, there was some truth in it. But oftentimes it's like our parents are also running patterns. So like our parents are doing the best that they can with the tools that they had. And while it wasn't always the greatest and what we needed in that moment, it sort of gives you perspective. It kind of humanizes everyone involved in the situation. Is that like, oh, okay, my parent had a wounded inner child too, so they're like trying to parent themselves and parent me at the same time, and having two kids parenting each other isn't always the most successful the most successful job. So it's like when you can evaluate and look and say like, oh, okay, my parent runs this pattern or has this limiting belief because, oh my gosh, this is what happened to them. So they grew up thinking that they weren't enough or that they had to do this or that, and so it's like, oh, so, you can see it for what it's worth. And it helps to take some of that pressure off of feeling like I wasn't good enough. It's like, oh no, actually I was enough. They were doing what they could. And that was all that they had to give in that moment.
100%. Yes. So
So,
true.
and not to say that it still doesn't hurt, because it still does hurt, but it allows, I think the key is it like allows the understanding, because it can give some forgiveness there. And that can help with that tremendously, because then we can recognize like, oh, it really wasn't about me. It was about them and their experience.
Exactly. And like being open to that context of the truth sometimes is the hardest part of
Mm.
realization. And once we kind of see that and accept that, it's like, oh, okay, that was hard and difficult, but the process of letting go helps us to shift timelines quicker. And I think it also helps us to release those limiting belief patterns and helps us to just, move forward into a new reality. So we're able to sometimes even see with like clear eyes how the way we used to be, it's like, wow, like if you go back to like your journal or something and to be like, oh, wow, I was going through these heavy emotions a while back and I'm so like grateful that I processed through that, or I didn't over internalize to the point where I was blaming the whole world and really hurting myself. So yeah, our emotions are extreme and intense at certain points and periods of our lives. And when we can be a little bit gentle with ourselves during the process of integration and healing, I think that would make it a lot more easier to kind of get over those humps and
Yeah.
challenges.
Yeah, and I think too, it's like oftentimes when we're in that and we like blame the world, it's because we don't really recognize what's within our control. And we also want, so like kind of going back to those emotional needs, is we want everybody to meet those needs for us. And that's when we get angry and frustrated with the world. No one knows I exist. No one makes me feel important. No one loves me. No one this, no one that. And we're like waiting for someone to come and rescue us. But we actually have to start meeting those needs for ourselves first. And then, because I always say that's the ticket, because then you're not relying on external validation. You're not relying on someone to come and save you, because you have no control over that. You only have control over yourself, what you think, what you say, what you feel, what you do. So when you start showing up to meet your own needs, and granted, it's awkward at first, I'm not going to lie, because it's not something that we're used to doing. We're used to waiting for someone to come and do it for us. So it feels uncomfortable, it feels awkward, and it's really a journey. It's like a trial and error kind of process. You have to take it like a little science experiment and say, like, okay, I think to make myself feel significant, I would like to take myself to lunch. And that might feel awkward and uncomfortable, sitting in the restaurant or the cafe alone by yourself and feel like, oh my gosh, everybody's looking at me thinking I'm a loser because I'm here alone. And so maybe that's not what you do to make yourself feel significant. Maybe it's that you go and you buy yourself a book, or You buy yourself a new pair of shoes, something, but you have to figure out what it is that's going to make you feel significant. When you're doing that for yourself, then when the outside world, other people come and give you the needs that you need, then that's just like an added bonus, because it actually allows you to keep your power. It allows you to keep your control because you're not reliant on other people. And I think that's the big piece of the puzzle. I think the other piece of it is like knowing what you can control. You can't control what other people think, say, feel, and do. And that also is the trap. And that's why we feel like we get angry at the world, because we're trying to control everyone and we can't. We can only control ourselves. We can influence what's going on around us, but we actually have no control over it. So if we can recognize that, it allows us to take some of that, like, that grit and that anger away from the situation, because we're like, oh no, that's out of my control. I can only control what I have right now. And that includes your emotions. And I think we're often told that like we have no control over our emotions, but we actually do. And they happen fleetingly. So that's where it feels like we don't.
Wow, yes. That is so true. And thank you for sharing those actionable steps for people to kind of like start the journey of revealing their new self, because that's the most awkward part for sure. It's like, oh, what do I need to give myself
Yes.
love, to give myself that acceptance? It would feel so awkward in the beginning because it's almost like going back to shame, to be like, is that okay that I need that? Is that okay that I can have that? Do I deserve
Yes.
that? There's always like subconscious psychological things we have to reprocess. And these are fantastic. I love this so much. Yeah.
Oh, good, good, good. I'm so glad.
Yes. And where can people connect with you and see all of your inspiring content?
So I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and then I also have my website. Oh, and
Okay,
YouTube.
perfect. Okay.
So all the places.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to add that in the description below. Thank you so much, Kim, for coming on the podcast. It was such a delightful conversation, and I learned so much. And I'm sure the listeners will be so inspired to just really tune into their own inner child on the journey of healing, and hopefully also getting rid of some limiting beliefs in a healthy, holistic way.
Yeah, so it was great. Thank you so much for having me, Ari.